call to order the February 3rd Parks Commission meeting. Roll call, please.
March.
Here.
Bentley. Here. Halen.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Do I have an approval of the November 4th minutes?
I'll approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Audience items. Don't have anyone. All right. So, Steve, you have a presentation for us?
Well,
What's that?
loosely defined.
All right.
Would you like me to go here?
Sure. Wherever is fine.
Whatever you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
So, thank you for having me tonight. It really is my pleasure to be here. A little bit about my background is I am Polk City's representative to the Des Moines Polk County Trails and Greenways Committee. I also serve on the planning committee for Polk City's Big Creek Bike Ride. And what I'm really here to talk about is I'm also a member of the Polk City Community Visioning Committee. And I included a fact sheet that got into your packets. Great. So the top of that fact sheet basically talks about the big thing that's coming up next for us. And that is our focus groups meeting, which is coming up on February 29th and from 9 a.m. until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And about the middle of the page there, you can see that we're going to break that committee up into 4 different groups: older adults, parents and children, and within that group of parents and children, we have 2 groups: kids who are under age 12, I think, and then kids who are over age 12, and then active recreationists and steering committee members. And so I left that at the top just to extend an invitation to you to participate in that if you would like to. I should mention that Amy is a member of our Community Visioning Steering Committee, and we appreciate her contributions very much. So our 5 goals of the Community Visioning group are this. And these goals were arrived at by the entire committee. We had to write an application to become a community visioning group, community visioning city. And community visioning cities are those cities in Iowa that are 10,000 population and less, and also are along a major highway. So a group of us got together, a significantly large group of people got together and contributed text for the application for the community visioning application, which is through the Trees Forever organization, which is a statewide organization. And we came up with 5 goals. Number 1, constructing a connecting multi-purpose trail link between the Neil Smith Trail and the High Trestle Trail near and through Polk City's downtown. Basically, that trail, that proposed trail, would enter the city at the edge of what most of us call the technology park property, and then go in a direction as yet to be determined to hook into the existing High Trestle Trail, so that we would bring thousands, literally thousands of people into Polk City on a connector from the High Trestle Trail into our city, because the numbers are tremendous when it comes to the number of people who are riding the High Trestle Trail, particularly between Madrid and Woodward, and then also to Slater. So we have great potential there to bring people into our city and really help us grow ourselves as a bike-friendly community. Also, number 2, development of a trailhead park to serve as a launching point for the new connection link. You can't have a connector unless you have a place for people to park their cars. And so number 2 would be some type of area where people could park their vehicles, unload their bikes, and then get on the trail. Whether they were starting from here or whether they, in some way, shape, or form, were ending. Number 3, improving the existing trail links in Polk City. I think everybody's aware, we have a bike path along both sides of Broadway. That's a busy street. We have other sections of multi-purpose trail, and when I say multi-purpose trail, I mean the 10-foot wide trail as opposed to the regular 4-foot wide sidewalk. We have several areas where we have that in our city, but in many cases it abruptly comes to an end. And so our group identified improving the existing trail links in the city as goals. Also, number 4, enhancing safety features along both existing and new transportation systems and recreational trails. A big part of community visioning is also trails beautification, sidewalk beautification, things like that. Many cities who participate end up with designated areas in their downtowns, on their squares, whatever, that are beautified corners that really demonstrate that they have a real commitment to beautification in their cities. And then number 5 is development of an access point to Saylorville Lake near the existing Polk City Sports Complex, part of the Greater Des Moines Water Trails and Greenways project. There's this. Are you familiar with the water and the water trails and Greenways project, Des Moines? That's the big project that involves redoing the Des Moines River down in the heart of downtown Des Moines to have the rapids for the kayakers and stuff like that. But it extends way beyond Des Moines. The plan includes a section in it for an area with benches and stuff like that for birders and people who like to just sit and enjoy nature, also anglers. And that would be located on that hill as you go down from the ballparks area there down toward the lake on this side of the mile-long bridge. That's the identified area there. And we saw that as a great opportunity for Polk City to tie into a much larger project. So we included that in our plan as one of our goals. So who are we and what have we been doing? There are 29 members on the steering committee. We started out with a small committee of about 8, and then word spread, and we grew and we grew again, and we're now at 29 members. And what's key about these 29 members is they really are from all walks of life and age groups and all parts of the city. When we were designing this committee, we wanted to make sure that we were as inclusive as possible, and so we reached out to a lot of individuals from all around the city through word of mouth. It includes 3 city councilors. Councilman Sarchett is a member, Councilman Walters is a member, and Councilman Anderson is a member. It also includes a Parks and Rec member. I already mentioned Amy is a member of our committee, and also we have a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission on our committee as well. We also have representation from the DNR and Polk County Conservation Service, so we're looking, at those areas around the city that help feed people into the city. And the City Council unanimously approved the community vision effort and agreed to put $2,000 toward any project selected. And the city is required to put $2,000 toward a project. So we were pleased that the council approved that unanimously and helped us out there. So really, the second paragraph is to let you know that community visioning is not something that just started last week. Community visioning really got rolling in February of 2018, and through various meetings, awareness of CV came about. Our application was filed in August of 2019, and I was surprised at this myself because I'm a note keeper and I keep track of things, and I've been at 22 different CV and other meetings along the way since 2018 for this effort. We've had 5 official community visioning meetings, and our next one is coming up on February 13th, where we will get together, and I think we're going to talk about the results of our survey. Maybe one of you received the survey that was sent out by Community Visioning. Maybe not, but we had 122 responses to the survey sent out on behalf of Community Visioning. And for that, we got an attaboy from the Trees Forever organization, because they rarely get that kind of return. So it just demonstrates once again how involved the residents of Polk City are in these kinds of issues. So, and then I also mentioned that we have a big meeting coming up on the 29th, which involves all the various focus groups. We were required to get from 8 to 10 people for each of the focus groups, and we're doing really well there in terms of the number of people that we have interested in being on a focus group, and again, we're happy to include any of you as well. So things that have happened that tie into what Community Vision is working to accomplish, and I think these are 3 great things that have happened in our community. The Creekview Estates development, I'm sure you know where that is, the one that's north of Wolf Creek, the new one, 33 acre. That's going to have 10-foot wide multi-use trail in it instead of the 4-foot normal sidewalk, and that will tie into the street where it crosses over to Vista Court. So that's really good for us, because Vista Court is what leads to the beginning site for the potential High Trestle Trail connector. And Vista Court will undoubtedly have a 10-foot wide multi-use trail along it as well. The other thing was just recently announced, and that's the North Third Overlay project. The street right outside here that goes north, and that will include multi-use trail in it as well, and it would connect to the Kiwanis Park trail that's already a multi-use trail, and go north, northeast, all the way up to Vista Court. So in essence, we would have multi-use trail all the way down from Hug, and then cross, go along Vista Court out to the beginning of the potential High Trestle Trail connector, and then also down in toward Polk City to hook into the Kiwanis Park multi-use trail to bring people into Polk City. So I think those are fantastic things, and we're just really pleased and really proud of the people who have brought those forward. The other thing that I'm pleased about is the removal of the 510 South 3rd green space from public hearing. As many of you probably know, there was going to be a public hearing on that to look at selling that property for development, and thanks to Councilman Sarchett, who put forth the motion to not approve that going to public hearing, that green space is just that, a green space and a clean slate. And our comments were really, we're in the middle of community visioning. Let's potentially use this wonderful green space as part of what we're doing. And so we're pleased that that is happening at this time. The only other 2 things I'll do is put in a plug. We have a Facebook page, Polk City Community Visioning. And I put as many pictures as I possibly can on that Facebook page. And at the end of the meeting tonight, or before I leave, I'd like to take a picture with you so we can put that on our Facebook page and let all of our Facebook viewers know that you are actively engaged in community visioning. And the second thing is I do a monthly newsletter for the Polk City Community Visioning. And I know, Amy, you're on that mailing list. I'm sure you open it up immediately when it comes. And if any of the rest of you would like to have your emails added so that you receive that newsletter, I would be more than happy to do that. I will say that last week I met with Chelsea Huseman, the city manager, and Chelsea offered to begin adding a community section to our newsletter to highlight things happening in the city that lend themselves to the benefit of community visioning. And one of those is the thing that I talked about here, number 2, that's the 3rd Street and Trail Project. And so you can see the actual maps if you are tied into our newsletter. So with that, I will stop talking, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to respond.
That's really good.
So do you have space kind of already envisioned out for that connector lot to connect in with the High Trestle Trail? Is that what it sounds like?
Well, in 2015, there was a study done and by the city's engineering firm, and it identified 3 different potential routes for that trail. One basically goes east, another one goes north and east, and another one goes more north and east. So it's yet to be determined which would be the best route to go. And of course, you know, there would need to be discussion with landowners there about the trail.
Was this tied in with the idea of making the trail across Iowa too? Like, I remember seeing that.
Well, sure. That trail that I think you're talking about is part of that 100-mile sort of Raccoon River Valley trail that includes the High Trestle Trail and then takes you over to, I think, maybe Perry and then down and around. This is just a wonderful opportunity to bring some of those people who would be riding that trail into Polk City as a destination. It all works together.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for the time.
All right. We are due to nominate a chairperson for this year. Amy and Holly, you would be next up. If either of you want to right now, or and then we'll also have pro tem.
I might wait. But yeah, that's like, what's that?
I will take whichever one is needed.
I can, I could totally take one. I don't know what the next week is gonna bring.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So I'll nominate Amy for chairperson.
Right, and a second. All right, all in favor of Amy for chairperson? Aye. Great. Well, what?
I'll take roll.
All right, and then pro tem, I'll be
Yeah.
So a nomination for Holly.
I'll nominate Holly.
I will second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Right. Okay, reports and particulars.
So Ken Morris, our tree guy, could not be here, but his report was the trees are cold, but they're in good hands, and he wants everyone to think spring.
That was a very short report.
It was a very short report for him. And then for the city manager, Chelsea reviewed all the applicants for the Parks Rec position. It's been narrowed down to 4 candidates. The interviews will be held this week. Hopefully, when those are finished, put out an offer and move forward with a March start date.
Is that a full-time role or part-time?
Full-time.
Full-time. Nice.
I think the person will wear many hats to start, but yes. And that is all I have from staff.
Yeah, so I'd like to not spend a ton of time, but kind of expand on my email that I sent you guys earlier, and principally from the Jenny's point there and the stuff that Steve covered, I think that this is going to be a big year parks. I'm hopeful that this will be a big year park related. Obviously, with community visioning, I don't think you can understate all. And Steve's done an outstanding job building a committee of 29 people, and he's absolutely right. It's all over the place. The conversations. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but they've just been outstanding, and so excited to organize that. And we talked early on. I think it was Woodward or Granger had gone through it, and that was basically like a 10-year roadmap work that they did. And if we can, obviously you want to do things as fast as possible, but it's just so exciting to see what could be possible with some organization. And then obviously the Parks and Rec director, to think that, maybe a little bit ambitious, but this meeting next month to have that person here is like, I'm just super excited for that. Again, that's another thing that really the impact can't be understated. I think that we have a really untapped aspect of the community that we can utilize so much better with that. But with those two things happening, I think that we also spend, and when I say this, I'm trying to be introspective from the city and not through anybody's fault, but I don't think we've also utilized you guys very well. And I think that there's a number of reasons for that. But I was thinking the July meeting was kind of a watershed moment for me, and we talked about this a little bit, and I went back and watched that today. I usually try to watch the meetings, but remember that meeting. But there's a lot of great ideas and a lot of good discussion, and we don't really have the infrastructure and the understanding from the different groups, council, staff, parks, that we need to be able to implement a past program, to set up meet and greets. And I know from your guys' perspective, I heard a lot of questions, and I'm assuming there's passion around this. I mean, why would you be here if you didn't have that? But some maybe questions on what's my role. Like, again, a lot of great ideas, and then who takes that and makes it the next step. And I don't have, obviously the answers for much, if any of those, but I think that if we can, the idea of having a work session, and I don't know that now is the best time, but I think maybe with some of the stuff that's coming with community visioning, that's a good option, so we can just highlight some of these things that, in that meeting and in other meetings, Bridget talked about the unique position I think that we're in, that we have some opportunities for some funding, not necessarily from the city, but also from the city that she referenced. A lot of places don't have that, and we're not yet. I'm, as a council person or advocate for the city, whatever, probably not doing the best job of highlighting, we've got some needs here, and I would say some stark needs, just to build what most communities have as just standard sort of baseline parks. And so I think that those options are out for us, and so it's kind of a ambiguous promise or proposal at this point, but just want to put that out there that I think as we move ahead, keep coming up with those, because I know some of these have probably gone somewhere and some haven't. I really love the Parks Path and highlighting the different green spaces, traditional parks, ways to encourage people to use things that they probably don't even know are out. And so with the Dutch survey too, I know we kind of had done one, I think after that, sort of in preparation for the parks. Did you guys get a copy of that? Okay, I'll make sure that to include you, because some of that's related obviously to what you guys see. So again, that sort of communication that I think will improve, or I want to try and make better. Again, I know your time's valuable and appreciate the work that's been done. And again, I don't want to paint this in any other light than whatever it was before. I hope becomes more in a little bit, maybe more. So I guess there's maybe an underpinning to that, and Holly, being 2 days short of a due date, maybe an exception, but maybe there'd be a little bit more time commitment coming up with some of these things, as community visioning and Parks and Rec kind of comes up. So I think long-winded, again, and take a certain outlook, but I do think that there's some things that we can do on the city side that will better utilize this, that I do think hasn't been. So I don't know if there's a if you guys have any thoughts on any of that, but I'd love to. I mean, is that
I
am I
think
off
it's
base with it?
exciting and kind of what the thoughts that we've all had.
Yeah.
That we don't know exactly what our role is and want to do more, and giving that.
And where it's going, like, because I remember we discussed this third green space, but then I never heard anything from it, so I didn't even know. Like, and maybe I missed an email, but like even knowing like what we talked about did that contribute to this being staying a green space, or like, you know what I mean? Because we had talked for quite some time on that.
Yeah, so I think, as Steve mentioned, it was kind of out there for a while. We listed it. We didn't initially get much back in terms of, and I was actually one that's, rather than ignoring this, or I shouldn't say ignoring, but, just letting it sit there, which again, green space is fine, but what's it worth? And so that sort of, I think, precipitated the initial offer. Then we actually kind of closed it, I think, if I'm getting the timing right, and then got a bid in what I would consider, again, if you want it to be residential, a pretty good bid, honestly, for a proposal, I should say. But ultimately came to the conclusion that, especially with, like Steve said, the community visioning work coming up, let's not, miss an opportunity. So I think the role that you guys could play is maybe it's an offshoot of community visioning conjunction. I'm not sure the best way, but, what are some ideas for how that could become a little bit more? I know Ken had offered plant some trees, and I think that's, there are little things that can be done immediately to make it better. And obviously the ultimate might take a little bit more.
So what we discussed is an other decision-making process, because like we did discuss like what space for, just so I know like how what we say here, how does it transfer over to other making things?
I think so, but I also think that historically, I don't know who else watches the meetings.
Yeah.
I know that they're pretty lightly attended, which I mean that's fine, right? Mm-hmm. It's a good thing that they're out on video, but I'd like to see a more direct. Again, the hurdle, at least from what I'm being told, is as public groups, we have a open meetings requirement. So we have to post when the meetings are, hold them at a certain time that's stated a certain point in advance. But I know I'd like to see a sort of a joint council, mayor, staff, parks commission planning to kind of say, here both in terms of the parks that we have maybe being used a little bit more, the parks that aren't being developed, how would we develop those, and then the overall process of when that happens, who and how do we pick out playground for the obvious piece? Who, what's the best way to get feedback on, the dog, which we thought everybody was going to like, and then turns out the neighbors not so much, right? So how can we get the feedback if we want to have neighborhoods, but then have a cohesive plan that meets the needs of the overall town, but listing most efficiently for the, whatever the neighborhood is for the park that's closest to them. I think that we can target that with, people that we know and do it differently. So that probably, again, I don't want to offer that up and then say pause, but I think maybe getting the Parks and Rec person on and getting their ideas, because they probably have much better ideas on a lot of this stuff than they're the expert, right? So, but again, I think that's something that is happening, but could be done maybe a little bit more directly or.
And Holly, just to elaborate, I I know Josh was here, but I'm not sure if Kelly was here, but a few years ago, we did a parks prioritization plan, where as part of this group, went through each park, what do you want it to look like, when do you want it to look like that, and basically take that to council, so when they're doing their budgeting, the Parks Commission has identified this park being the top priority. And that's how the Doc Simmer Memorial, the 12 Oaks, and the Lost Lakes got essentially in the budget. Has that been 2 years ago now?
Yeah, it's
2 years ago now. So what's odd is everything is always behind. So right now, council is in the middle of working with staff to firm the fiscal year 2021 budget, which doesn't start until July 1st.
Okay.
So you're essentially making decisions about the money you're going to spend 6 months in advance. And then you have to wait a full another year before you can make, and there's some leeway to those, but the overall just big picture budget piece.
Yeah.
And the parks, like the infrastructure for Lost Lakes was a few $100,000. So it's not glorious. It's not like one of those fancy projects, like I call it, when you get the finished project, but it's a start. And so that might be something that the new Parks and Rec director, my assumption is they're going to be your link to all things city, right? You have your council liaison, you're going to have this, their whole focus is going to be on improving Parks and Rec programming in the city. That includes the facilities, that includes the amenities, all those things. So depending on, like Rob said, what their direction is or what their ideas are, they may come to the table and say, we need to do this, or like to see that, or come attend a group meeting, or all kinds of options.
Yeah, I think they are the standing link again. Not my decision to make, but to make a one-off sort of, maybe it's an annual, every other year work session. Their work's out there, and I probably should have done a better job of not. It's not like there's nothing there, right? But that's a living, breathing document that needs to be validated, that needs to be updated, that, what parks have come on since then, where do they get plugged in, that kind of stuff. So, and again, I don't want to sign it, but I would hope that there would be some value to maybe seeing things a little bit more with what we sit back.
I apologize because I'm sure I could have seen this at some point, but would you be willing to send on the job description that position that last there? And then another thing that we've talked about some, but I'm not sure how to get at, is that we just canceled a lot of. So, and I know there's not agenda items. We want to say to
As
use
the
that
chair.
as productive time instead of not meeting, because then we would stretch us for 3 or 4 months. So
As the chair, by all means, that'll be a conversation you'll have. Right now, the chair and staff has that conversation. It'll still be staff. It'll just, instead of being the city clerk, it'll be the parks director. I'm still getting used to what we're actually calling that position, Parks and Rec director. But yes, so if like, for instance, last month in December, I would go to Kelly and say, I don't have any agenda items. We can cancel the meeting. Is there a topic of conversation? So as chair, you'll be involved in that part of it and identifying the agenda. And if there's not a quorum, because you have to have a minimum of 4 for it to be a meeting. So those are all things that you'll kind of get familiar with in this new role.
I have one other question, and it's not time consuming. I can't apologize, I have seen the parks prioritization plan that was done, but out of curiosity, has the community group that, or is that, should they?
Yeah, I don't know that we've gone through it explicitly, but that's a good idea.
It might be just good.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And so on the agenda thing, this is probably a bad example because you didn't want to build things. This is physically labor intensive maybe, but the open house idea, as especially in the warmer months, going to park and encouraging more people and doing like a cleanup again, work related stuff. But I think that there are ways to. I get your point. Maybe I'm inferring a little bit, but you have the cadence of the monthly meetings. Let's use those. I mean, everybody loves procedurally approving the things that you need to, but there's not always going to be those. And is there an opportunity to then, you know, think of that idea, but you know, or just a brainstorming session, right? On whatever, ice cream social, right? A reason to, you know, get people there, talk about, you know, nice to have whatever, right? Like I usually try to steal from other communities because I'm not smart enough to think of the good ideas on my own, and sometimes you'll see that. I mean, it's different by size, but I think that's something that you do. But I like the idea of, you know, hey, let's either we have the business, but we can also drum up enough business that it kind of becomes self-perpetuating and lifts little.
And just so you guys are aware, it's not just parks that don't meet. Like, you are set up to meet monthly, but the planning and zoning, for instance, they meet when some new developer wants approval to do something, right? And so there are many months where they don't meet as well.
Sure.
One of the conversations that's been a topic for a long time, and again, it'll be up to the Parks and Rec director, we can ultimately adjust too. So if you do get some work sessions and you do the ice cream social, it may not make sense to meet in the winter months. You can't go to meet at a park. You have to meet here. You guys may decide as a collective group that it makes sense to meet every 3 months. I don't know the answer to that. We have other groups that meet like that.
Yeah.
So don't feel like because it says in the code you meet once a month that you have to meet once a month. But if you're missing momentum or you feel like you're not using the time, then that's one topic. Or it may be adjusting the other direction too. Sure. So I think I know we did this a lot when we were going through the city manager change. There was a lot of hurry up, wait, a lot of let's see what happens when Chelsea gets here. But the reason is because when she got here, she had a lot of really great ideas that if we would have went one direction, we would have kind of had to back up and start over. So it makes sense to be in a little bit of a holding pattern as we bring this new person in. But I think you'll start seeing some momentum. Like Rob said, we're going to be very busy this year.
What was the first thing? Oh, job
description. I got that. I'll handle that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of changes with this group sector.
Yeah. And I mean, certainly getting your hands dirty, I always say that, right? As volunteers, it's probably a lot more fun to get your hands on something and actually do something, an ice cream social passport idea, versus coming in here and stamping that, yes, you can use the sports complex, right? What would be a little more fun or a little better use of your willingness? So I'm looking forward to that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Anything else kind of in that vein that you guys would maybe like to see from the council level? And again, that can be rhetorical too, as you think of stuff, just because again, that communication more.
I think it's just hard to know, like, is there funding to work on those priorities? And I think that we're all ready to, as soon as we know we can put playground equipment somewhere, excited to help with that.
Yeah.
But it just kind of creates a unknown for us. Or we could do better the other way of coming to council meetings too. And I will only speak for myself, and I do not know if any of you are going, so I apologize, but I know
They're
I am
super excited.
So,
and
there's other things.
If nothing else, you can always watch them too. If you can't get here at 6, they are just like your meetings are recorded. We record all of those in their archive, so you can always go back and. Although Rob talks really softly, so he's really hard to hear sometimes on the recording. Yes, but you do that trail off thing, like you start here, and then I'm like,
noted. I will speak loudly and clearly.
We're all excited. Yeah.
I don't have Josh's commanding, beard-filled voice.
It comes from the beard.
It does.
It's caucus time. Okay, anyone have anything else? All right, we will adjourn until March 2nd. Amy will take over.
Congratulations.
All in motion to, or all in favor to adjourn.
Aye.
Were you wanting a picture?
Yeah,
You guys, my hair was.
but I left.
Oh,
At least you got here.
that was
Take
it felt weird. I was like, wait, it's been like that the
And I
whole
got this newsletter check
I didn't
folder
even
from
know.
my
And I
Put it in there, it's so
I
clear.
just realized
That's
I
what I
smell
was
like,
Oh, yes.
I smell like
Forget that.
frying
Take it
oil.
out.
I fried.
And then also, if any of you are interested in being on the newsletter,